Well, hello, friends. So fun being here with you. Greetings from Southern California. A lot of you I know from Atlanta. I moved to Southern California a year ago this week, which is crazy. And Krista asked me to pop in here and talk about some mindset stuff because I feel like it's a good thing to deal with, mindset. And it's going to drive me crazy, but I'm sorry that it looks like I have a little beanie hat with the fan above me. This is my bedroom, but natural light. So what are you going to do? What makes me qualified to talk about mindset? Well, for one, I'm a mindset coach. And hey, Patricia, Patty Burke. We moved after a series of things that really set me up for being used to change. I'll take you back to 2018. 2018 was a time when my mom died in January. Later that year, my son was diagnosed with dyslexia. After that, my oldest son was diagnosed with Lyme disease as we moved into 2019. And then we found out shortly thereafter that it was time to move to the West Coast. So kind of crazy. So that's where my journey comes from. I've helped people lose weight, get fit, pursue wellness, but I can tell you for a fact that what goes on between the ears is one of the hardest things to get control over. So it's the smallest area, but a lot goes on there. So let's talk about something. I have about 7 pages of notes, but that seems kind of ridiculous. I wanted to talk to you about this. Oh, you probably can't see it. It's backwards. Corona brain. Corona brain. What is Corona brain? Well, Corona brain is the season that we're in where everything that we watch on the news, it seems like, is... And can you guys tell me, am I on my personal page? I'm supposed to be in a group. Can somebody just answer it? Is this my personal page or is this a special group? Because if not, I got to jump in the right group. But somebody pop that into the comments. Corona brain is a time when we watch so much of the news. We just take all these inputs. We're focused on virus statistics and numbers, and it's not really, oh good, thank you, Patty. It's not really where our mindset should be, right? What you focus on, what you feed grows. So if we're constantly taking in death rates and we're constantly taking in virus stuff and schools closing and mask debates and all that kind of stuff, it's very difficult to stay positive and remain vulnerable in that. We just become vulnerable to all the inputs, right? Tell me give me a thumbs up if you felt that, if you've been taking in all those inputs. So what happens when you don't think about death and dying? What happens, what if we flashed back 3 years ago when you weren't constantly bombarded by those things? How was your life? How were you living? What was your mindset then? I want you to think about that because guess what? We get to control not only the inputs, but the thoughts around the inputs that we take in. What I'm starting to see now, many of you are familiar with something called post-traumatic stress disorder. And post-traumatic stress disorder can be something, you see war vets that have gone through it, people who have had traumatic events in their lives, abuse, things like that. We are experiencing pre-traumatic stress disorder. We are experiencing trauma based on what we think is to come. Think about that. It hasn't yet happened, but we are assuming something that might happen and we are getting stressed out. Cortisol's going up. We're not sleeping well. We're packing on pounds. We're doing a lot of things that are not healthy. Okay? Let's talk about pre-traumatic stress disorder and what we can do about it. I want you to think about what you're grateful for right in this moment, right in the present, right? I'm standing here. It's in Southern California. It's cool. I know y'all in Georgia. Bless your heart. It's probably really hot. But the sun is shining. You can hear my voice. You clearly have internet or cell service. I want you to think about those little things, those little micro celebrations, we can call them. Make a list. Keep track of those because those are important. You don't have to fall prey to pre-traumatic stress, right? You don't have to take part in and accept Corona brain. We don't have to do it. We can stay alive in the present and celebrate being human, the full experience of humanity. Because here's the thing. Whatever circumstances change, things are going to change, right? They've been changing. A lot has changed in 6 months. Can I get an amen, right? We did not see this coming. Things are going to continue to change, but no matter what changes, you, I, we still have our brains. We still have the blessing of our brain, and we can control and think about what we're thinking about. That's a gift, right? We don't have to stay stuck. When you focus on the negative, you give it all your power. How many of you have kids, right? If you have kids, right, so many times they're arguing over stupid stuff, and you're like, stop giving your brother your power. It's true, because you can choose to just let it go, right? We can choose to move on. We can choose to have a new thought. And that's really what I want to talk about today. So I made some little flashcards that are going to be backwards because I didn't do the flippy thing on this, but you'll track with me, right? Let's start off with this one. This is scripture. You are probably very familiar with this verse, but for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a sound mind, 2 Timothy 1:7. It's backwards. You're welcome. That makes you work extra hard today, right? But I want you to think about this. Here's the thing. We've already been programmed to think the worst, but you get to come back to the present moment. You get to remember where you are right now and be grateful in that moment. We're still here. We're still a testimony, okay? Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. What have a lot of us been doing, right? What have a lot of grief, right? We're dealing with grief. We might be grieving. I could talk for hours on the process of grief, but we might be grieving what we thought was to come. I know I'm grieving the fact that we're not going back to school here. Who knows when? California's crazy. They've all lost their minds. That's okay. We're okay with that. We aren't doing sports. We're really still in lockdown here. There's a lot of grief about what I expected from life, what I thought I was entitled to in life. So that process of grief, what do we typically do in a grieving situation? When my mom died, I had the luxury of calling a good friend, going out crying, hugging, right? We've been stripped of a lot of those things. And so in place of that, we might want to numb the pain. We might want to numb out. We might want to escape, whether that's binge watching Netflix. We might want to over exercise or over drink or over Facebook or over consume mainstream media, all of those things, right? Numbing out. It serves a purpose, but generally the purpose isn't super helpful. And why do we do it? We do it because we don't really want to do the work to grow. But imagine this, if you will. And this is not Pollyanna, so go ahead and stop assuming that it is. Imagine, if you will, that we came through this crisis stronger. I'm not going to tell you you should come through it skinnier or fitter or any of that kind of stuff, but stronger, because you can make commitments to yourself and keep them. You can build a chain of integrity saying that you will do something, that you will think a certain way, that you will show up a certain way, that you will continue to be the light. What if we come through this crisis a different way? What if we say, I don't take agreement with Corona Brain. I'm not going to stay stuck in Corona Brain. You have the power to do this. So here's a little graph. Again, it's going to be backwards, but you're going to get the gist of this. Here's what life is supposed to look like. 50% happy face, 50% sad face. You could say that's good or bad, good or evil, whatever. Good things that happen to you. We are programmed, and I would argue social media does a really good job of programming us to believe that everything should be great all the time, right? If you're sad or depressed, shame on you. You want to keep that on the down low. If something bad happens, sorry, it's just not your day. Well, what if we just really sink into this? That it's really 50-50, that the bad things are there for a reason. They have purpose, right? Imagine if you're supposed to be happy all the time. Like if I go back to when my mom died, I'm glad I wasn't happy about that. I'm glad that I walked in that 50 of sadness, because without that 50 of sadness, I can never see the 50 of joy. You have to have both in equal measure. You don't have to stay stuck there though. So I want you to think about this. The human life is not supposed to be a vacation, right? We have the audacity to believe that we were sent to this planet to live a life of luxury or happiness or wealth, all those things, and we're just not. Isn't that crazy when you start to think about it? Amen. We want perpetual summer, but not the 4 seasons. I love that. When you start to kind of think that way, the thought might enter your mind that a pandemic, right on time. We were expecting you. It's about time for a pandemic, right? Bet you haven't thought about that. That's kind of a crazy thought to think about. But What if it was always supposed to be that way? And I believe in a sovereign God, so I know it was always supposed to be that way. I just got my feelings hurt because he didn't ask my opinion, right? Like, I didn't want to be in a pandemic. This is not a good time for a pandemic. But it does fit in this model of 50-50, right? We get to choose how we think about the pandemic, how we think about schools not opening, how we think about the purpose of a mask, churches meeting, things like that. We get to think about that, right? So what are you going to do with this spectacular opportunity called life? I would urge you to take this moment. If you're not there yet, get unstuck. Don't stay stuck in this. And if you need help, right, phone a friend, get some accountability, but you get to do your best in the hard times, because what you do in the hard times, the now, that strength that I was talking about, yeah, you can do strength getting push-ups. And push-ups are a great analogy, right? Like, how do you build muscle? You tear it down, you build it back up, and that's what's happening now. So that's the beauty of what we get to do now. One of my favorite, oh, great. Yeah, that's right. The theology of suffering, right? We're all prone to that. And it's not for naught, right? There's a reason for that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about Corona Brain. What is it? We didn't think we would be experiencing a pandemic, but here we are, right? We're fully aware of it right now. The 2 weeks has passed, right? And the earth isn't wrong. God isn't wrong for what was allowed. So where do we go from here? I want to teach you, if you're not familiar with the coaching model, I want to give you an example of the coaching model. We'll walk through some scenarios, and I want you to encourage, when you see this, if you have a question about this or you want to walk through a scenario of your own, something personal, feel free to message me. Or if it's not personal and you want to drop it in the comments below, this is a great model, okay? I use this with my current coaching clients. We do a lot of journaling, food tracking, things like that. But I always love to put in the margin these things. This is the self-coaching model, and I will stop talking about what I use it for and give you the dirt on what it is. And I'm so sorry that this is backwards, but you're gonna see what this is. CTFAR. Give me a thumbs up or heart if you've ever seen this, if you are familiar with the coaching model. This is something you're gonna wanna write down. And I'll tell you what each of the letters stands for. C is for circumstance, okay? Circumstance is something neutral, right? It's something that we'd all agree on. So for example, here's a circumstance. I'm holding a green pen. We'd all agree it's green. You might want to say it's neon green. Some people might say it's Kelly green, but it's a green pen, right? We wouldn't say I'm holding a gray elephant. That would not be neutral. So a circumstance is just something that's neutral. We are in a pandemic. That is a good C line, okay? The T, the CT, T is for thought. A thought is a one sentence expression that you might have around the C, right? So I'm just going to tell you what they are first, and then we'll walk through what you can do with this. F is for feeling. Feeling is a one word emotion that comes out of that thought. So that thought goes through your mind. You may not even be aware of what the sentence is necessarily unless you do some digging, but the feeling pops up: frustration, anger, right? Jealousy, love, hope, whatever that is, okay? So those are feelings. A is for action. Action Jackson. Just kidding. My mom used to say that. Action is what you do with that feeling. Our feelings do drive us to action. A lot of times we try to act our way into feelings or other things, but we don't have the appropriate thoughts to back that up. That's why it's called kind of that Pollyanna, like you want to will it so. Doesn't work. R is your result. So that's the actual result. Now I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to make it not about the pandemic first. We'll circle back to that one, but I love that the power of your mind, right? Remember that power, no fear, love, sound mind. God gives us that chance to use the prefrontal cortex. That's why we're different than animals. We can think about these things, and thinking about things is important. Again, not getting stuck in the thought process. But let me give you a circumstance. Many of you, if you're my age or you went through school and you learned about the Rwandan genocide, I read a book, and I can't remember the name of it. It was a fantastic book. And it was about a survivor and how she's gone on to do amazing things in this world, being advocates for women's rights and just a whole lot of things that have made the world a better place, okay? So her circumstance was lived through the Rwandan genocide, okay? I can't think of a more worse thing. That sounds horrible. And if you read her account, it is traumatic to the core. Her thought could have been something as simple as many of us would say, my life will never be the same. I'm ruined, right? How many of us have thought that about an abusive situation or something that's happened to us? Maybe we've gone through a divorce or lost a child. I'm never going to be the same. My life is over, okay? So if you think that thought, the feeling that you have is despair. I'm just making this up. It could be a variety of things. Despair, hopelessness, right? What happens when you feel hopeless? What action do you take when you feel hopeless? That goes back to that numbing out, right? You could do nothing. You could become an alcoholic. You could, waste your days away in front of the TV, just zoned out, right? And the result is maybe you lose your job, gain a lot of weight, you become an alcoholic. The result always proves that thought line true. My life is ruined, okay? That wasn't her story. Her story was a thought of, I survived for a reason. God will use my story. And her feeling, because that thought, she took that thought captive and made it not in her own, right? She made it more powerful. Her feeling was hope. Her feeling was rescue for others, right? Her action became a living testimony, a light for the world, a light for women, a light for other survivors. Her result was helping victims through the genocide. Her result was helping people many years later come out of whatever shell they're trapped in. Do you see how that works? I can give you another example that we use with kind of weight loss. So the circumstance could be I have 50 pounds to lose. A thought could be, I'm never going to lose the weight. Nothing ever works, right? That's the thought. What kind of feeling do you have? You can pop your feeling down in here in the comments. What feeling do you have when you automatically say nothing's going to work? You're not hopeful. That's back to that despair. That's back to agony, right? Your actions can't line up in a positive way when your feelings and thoughts are set up that way. So your action is do nothing, right? And your result is you don't lose weight, you gain weight. Nothing ever works, right? You've proved that thought true. But what if your thought becomes intentionally, my thought is, it's going to be different this time. And you believe that. What feeling comes from that? The feeling of hope, the feeling of adventure, right? Some new plan, some new exercise routine or whatever, accountability, right? And what happens when you're feeling adventurous? You're taking action. You're doing the things, you're showing up differently. And your result is the weight comes off, okay? So how does this have to do with the pandemic? How does this have to do with Corona brain? I could talk about this for a long time, but I want you to think about this. We're all stuck in the pandemic, right? I don't want you to have any guilt and shame if you've had thoughts that were negative or you got angry, frustrated. We've all felt that, remember? 50-50. But I want you to think about, you're in a pandemic. When I started this process in the pandemic, I was pissed, right? When I really realized that we are not going back to school, we're doing distance learning, my husband's working from home, and everything was like locked down hard in California. My thought was, my husband moved me to hell. I mean, I really kind of thought that, like as if things were different somewhere else. And my feelings were frustration. I had a lot of anger. Things were bubbling up. It's kind of that whole grief process. And my action was not doing a lot of anything. I was doing a lot of driveway drinking. I'll admit it. And the result was not pushing myself forward. The result was not leading my family well, leading my friends well, serving my customers well, getting out into the community and seeing how I could help. That was the result. I didn't want to stay with that, but you got to see where you are in order to move forward. So let's do this as a group. We're in the pandemic. I'd love to say we're going to be out of the pandemic in 4 weeks. We might be in this pandemic. I don't know. God knows. It's his provision, right? The thought can be, I can use this time, because guess what? I'm not driving to baseball practice and football practice and to school and to all those things. I can use this time to pour into the souls of my family, right? To show up and be a light for them. What is that feeling? That feeling is like, wow, electric, privileged. It is inspired. And the action is, I get up out of bed in the morning, I spend time in the Word, I do my exercise, I am focused and present. And I can love them a different way because I'm not trapped in that anger and frustration and resentment. Yes, it peers its little head out sometimes, but the result is we're moving in a different direction. The result is I know we're gonna homeschool. I'm not frustrated about it right now because it's a gift, right? I get to spend more time with my kids. Y'all, the CTFAR is the self-coaching model. It's something that you can use for so many of your, whatever comes up in life. And you can start, by the way, anywhere in this. So maybe you have a feeling, because this is, any of you have teenagers? They're so fun. They're so fun because they really make us remember what it's like to be a teen and challenge a lot of what we're created to do as parents. But I remember when I was a teenager having feelings. I had no idea. Like if you were to say, well, why are you feeling so crazy? I didn't know how to put words around that, right? I'm trying to coach my teenager how to do this because this is so powerful. But the thought, like you could just start, if you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling angry, maybe you're feeling excited. You don't even know why. I'm so excited today. Put that feeling down and then work backwards. Hi, Brianna. Work backwards. Figure out what is driving that. What's that thought, right? The other thing I would encourage you to do, whichever way you're working, you can also start with a result line. Like, how do I want to be? I want to be a person who shows up differently in the world. I want to be a person who fill in the blank, whatever it is for you. You can go backwards. And again, reach out to me if you want to help walk through this. But if the circumstance line is not indeed neutral, I want you to work on it until it is. Because imagine this, what if we just didn't react, right? What if we didn't form thoughts about negative situations? We just observed them. I mean, that's like, right? Like social media has taught us that we have to react and have a thought about everything, and then we got to share our thoughts. No, actually we don't. We can observe things. The power of observing things. I love to have this imagery, and I'm almost done. I promise you. Y'all have hung in there, and I love you so much because this is such good work. I mean, it's the stuff that makes us stronger, right? Better humans, more godly. When we have thoughts, I like to think of them instead of grabbing hold of them and trying to manipulate them. Sometimes you can just observe them, right? I like to think of it like a river flowing by. And my thought, I don't know why, I can't tell you why I think this way. It's not like I canoed a lot when I was a kid, but I just have a little feeling of a canoe floating by, and I'm just watching that thought like drift by. I don't have to react to that. I can watch it, right? But I'll end with this. We do have power in Scripture. God is a sovereign God. He is just merciful and loving. And He gives us the tools in His Word to not create fanciful thoughts, right? Not mantras or to will something into your life, prosperity, like, attraction, not that. But He says, again, it's going to be backwards for you, but I'll read it. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take every thought captive to make it obedient to Christ. That's from 2 Corinthians 10:5. And I want you to know, if you're stuck in this model, and you're thinking, how do I really want to think about this? Ask your Creator for help. He has the best thoughts. His ways are not our ways. He will help you shape that into a godly thought, right? Not to will it so, but to work His way through you. And that's the power of this. So we're not going to go on. Hopefully you've gotten some solutions about Corona Brain. Wherever you are right now in this process, there is healing in the doing. There is healing in the action. There's healing in saying, you know what? I'm not going to stay stuck anymore. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to work on my mindset. I'm going to work on my thoughts. All right, God, take them from me. They're yours. How do I pursue a life of wholeness in a pandemic where I feel like maybe I've been stripped of my rights, my perceived rights? But God, I trust you. God, I trust you that it's 50-50. I trust you that you allow me into this process and that we're partners in this. I'm telling you, changes everything. So I don't see any questions. Thank you for hanging in there. You can do this. Don't stay stuck. No corona brain. We're moving on, right? This can be a powerful time. Have a wonderful Monday.